Hi Nigel, it's James. James R. Hope you're well. It is the Friday morning. I know we were planning to talk on Thursday afternoon. Didn't quite go to plan at all yesterday. I had to go home because my son was ill and we had to take him to the hospital. He's okay now, but it meant I was away from work pretty much all of Thursday. And we're also having an alarm installed, upgraded I should say, at the workshop premises, and that meant that James P wasn't able to be in his office desk because it's hiding the alarm box system for a while. So there were many times yesterday, is what I'm saying, where unfortunately we weren't always able to get to every phone call. We received a few phone calls in at the end of the day, and I'm sorry we missed those. I was off site and James was out of his seat for quite a bit of the day. So Friday morning, first time back in, and I'm doing a video update for you just to discuss now the RACP. Now it's been degreased. We talked about having a look at the mounting points after the corrosion, and also the corrosion, sorry, now that we've got a bit clearer picture of things, now the grease is taken off. So I've just recorded a video for the final video series, so I'm just going to add that to the end now, and you can have a look at the Friday morning update to show you what happened on Thursday, the degreasing process, and have a think about the reinforcement plates. That's the bit that we obviously need to discuss mainly, because there are no cracks at the back, but there are some slight cracking at the front. You'll see that in the video now. Have a watch and then give us a call back and we'll speak shortly. Thanks, Nigel. We're working our way through the degreasing process now. Dave has been working very tirelessly to remove lots of years worth of road grime and dirt, and also some additional wax product, some sort of Schultzy wax that's been placed on the car, especially on the brake pipe area. It was like this originally. This is an area that we've purposely left for the video to show what it looked like. In areas there was heavy concentration of wax, and that have obviously got airflow dirt stuck to it now, which is why it's all black, grubby, and it actually smudges. There's some marks there that when you just rub your finger it just then starts smudging, but it doesn't actually come off. And so that's in a majority of the places around the brake pipes, for example. So what we're seeing here is relatively unusual, but this is staining of the seam sealer. So the OEM seam sealer is this colour here, and then all this is now being cleaned of the wax, and you can see there's some black sections there in the peaks and troughs of the troughs really of the seam sealer, and little bits left here, stubborn pieces. But all of this brown area here is staining of whatever chemical was in that sort of Schultz that had gone over the brake pipes. It's affected, you can even see the outline of the brake pipe there, where it's still, where it stopped that hit in the back. It's affected the seam sealer and made it soft, and it's still bleeding some sort of wax or bitumen based chemical, which means it's in no way going to be able to be over painted, and a lot of this area is going to have to be either bare metaled or scuffed up to neutralize that area and get it back to stable seam sealer, which can be over painted. And we've got a similar thing going round the back here. All of this brown markings are the staining from the spray wax that was placed on the brake pipes, and it's again down this section as well. You always get an OEM section down here where the BMW factory wax the brake lines and the fuel lines, but not to this brown level. So there's a fair amount of areas we're going to have to be doing a bit more than we normally would. It's not a problem for us, we don't mind that at all. Some cars come in with certain amounts of corrosion that have to have more work, and others come in with other things that have more work, whether it be wax areas like this, or some cars comes in with in the floor panel where we need to work on them more, but we'll work on that. So we're still to do the arches out here. Just wanted to show you the difference. So that's what it looks like when the car comes in, the amount of dirt and road grime that's been present and building up for many years. Remember, this is a 2006 car with 54,000 miles on it, and then when we start going through the degrease process, we get that lovely e-coat finish showing here, then the seam sealer, and then obviously the bleeding effect here, which we need to go through. It also gives us more chance to look at the corrosion now a lot of the dirt is off. Now it's got quite strong corrosion on the brake pipe brackets, which are these ones, and the fuel tank brackets, and also the RACP here and here. Now this is where the fuel tank strap goes. Sorry, not the fuel tank strap. The fuel tank, there's a buffer pad that stops the fuel tank touching the RACP. There's the right front mounting point of the RACP. And over the years, if that pad is migrated out or it's been missed or lost by somebody working on the car, the rubber, the plastic fuel tank rubs against the RACP, rubs the paint off, and then obviously causes a large risk of corrosion, which hasn't been going on for just a short amount of time. That's been going on for years there. We're getting a similar thing over here where the pad for the fuel tank has been missing and the fuel tank has been rubbing away. Then we've got fuel tank strap bracket here, which looks quite good, and then we've got a really nasty brake pipe bracket there, and then also matched with quite violent corrosion on the front fuel tank brackets, especially this right hand side one. I've got no idea why the right hand side one seems to get a lot more than the left, but there we go. That's the sort of thing we're dealing with. We certainly won't be keeping that on the car. We'll be using the new Reedish Motorsport ones. Then when you actually look closely, now the dirt is off, so we've taken the dirt off obviously in this area first, the rear and the sort of fuel tank area. We're still to do the underside. Look, that's what it looks like when it's not degreased. You can start to see a little bit of corrosion there, but you can't really assess the car properly until it's cleaned like this. And then when you do look in sort of closer joints and areas, you can see that there's corrosion breaking through seamed sections here. This is where the wiring loom comes through that grommet location. This is where the little boxes are for the brake pad and ABS sensor wiring to bolt to. We've got corrosion coming through on certain areas here and in weird places like underneath the very front. This deal is classed as the RACP because that's all part of the RACP panel, even though it's a rear trailing arm pocket. Bits of corrosion under here which are unusual. It almost looks like BMW have missed some seam sealer there and possibly stone rash. I doubt it because there's plastic undertrays that cover this, but for whatever reason there's corrosion which has been growing on the metal, and the pockets are quite violently corroding as well. Luckily we're going to be changing these because there's enough corrosion that the metal would be affected and therefore have to be seriously thinned out to remove the corrosion, and at that point it then becomes weak. And there's certain areas that you struggle to get tooling up to because it's in the way, the seal section is in the way of bringing an angle tool in, and also it's hidden inside a pocket location. So what's likely to happen is these will be replaced for brand new ones. And then we've got more corrosion around the handbrake console area on the edges and where the handbrake cables come through, various bits of corrosion in certain areas. Some small bits on the spring turrets here, little bits here breaking off, possibly where a spring's been removed and installed badly and it's chipped the paint because there's no normal reason why it corrodes there. You do get sometimes cracks, quite often, in the seam sealer here when the spot welds break, but that's not that common in cars that don't have cracks on this side, which it doesn't, for example, and there are no immediate obvious signs of spot weld failure up in this area. There's movement possibly on one there, but no breakage of corrosion yet, but we'll discover that as we start degreasing, wire wheeling and removing areas. So no crack in this location here, which is excellent, but that's not uncommon to find no cracks in a later model on the left hand side because that's built in after October 2004, so it has the plastic brace which fills this void here and makes it a solid part, so the box section effect of this less moves or less likely has a crack because it's also bonded in, so it tries to stabilize that. It's a very, very clever design and it stabilizes that. Sometimes then the energy moves to the right hand side and these haven't got a plastic piece in the right hand side and you sometimes see cracks there, but there's nothing yet at the moment, which is good. We've got lots of spot welds that have got signs of flex and movement which will need assessing and drilling out possibly and replacing. And then when we go to the front hand sections, we've got the spot weld which the brush touches just there. That one has started to break. I think I can see a crack starting around the outside of it. At the moment it doesn't seem to be any cracks growing from there, but it will still need to be drilled out and replaced with a plug weld so that we can penetrate weld into the threaded platform inside and then puddle it around the thin RACP. And we got that one and that one which are moving, and we got two that seem stable just there. This is a hairline crack. Lots of people miss this, lots of other companies do unfortunately, but that's just our knowledge over the years tells us that there is a crack from there to there, so that will be cut out and removed. And the same with this little one up here as well. That is a crack just from there to there. We've got another 1, 2 that are flexing, so they'll need some work. That's about it for the underside update of the rear. Now we've had the degreasing go on in the very rear section. Like I say, some more areas to still do, the battery tray, the wheel arch areas, and then the underside sections, just to give you a difference to what looks like when the cars are new and they're not protected in the centre section. This is how it comes from factory with no seam sealer, but they don't seem to get corrosion in these areas because of the excellent under trays and heat shield effects. Now just look at the difference on the left hand side. The left hand side is very, very rare to find corrosion down these seams sections of the chassis leg where it's spotted and spot welded to the floor pan, because BMW waxed this section to cover the brake pipe. So you always get good coverage of wax, which means corrosion can never really grow and moistures can't penetrate the area. Swap to the mirrored image on the right hand side where they never put any wax, and the chassis legs are now starting on E46s to give worries really, because there's corrosion on the outside lips, which is easy to get to because we can get to that no problem, but what about the trapped section behind there? That little flange from there to there all the way down is where it's spot welded, so that's metal to metal contact, and behind there will be a corrosion growth. So we need to understand the risk on this car and decide if it needs further work or whether it can be surface removed and then heavily protected and then later cavity wax fed out through the outsides to stop it corroding in future. So still some degreasing down the sides and also in the front sections as well, where this has been heavily waxed. So the waxing, you could argue in some areas, is a good idea because it can stop corrosion growing if it's applied sensibly. However, if the car is going in for some form of restoration and therefore needs paint and sealers, that cannot be applied on or anywhere near wax products. So the wax has to come off and be taken off. So we've got extra wax that's been placed on over the years in the front sections, which is why this is a lot dirtier than it is. So those areas need chemically scrubbing to remove that sort of wax, and we can get back to a bare standard then.